Imagine hiring a babysitter, finding out they've got a criminal record, and then telling everyone the background check came back clean. That is essentially what's happening in Downing Street right now, and somehow it keeps getting worse. Welcome back to British Reform, where the scandals come faster than Labour's excuses. So here's the story. Peter Mandelson, veteran Labour operator, Prince of Darkness, and now apparently the gift that just keeps on giving, was appointed by Keir Starmer as Britain's ambassador to the United States. Big job. Important job. The kind of job where you'd think, at the very minimum, the bloke passes a security check. Well, about that. It has now emerged, courtesy of The Guardian, that Mandelson actually failed his security vetting. Not scraped through. Not flagged for minor concern. Failed. In late January 2025, security officials conducted a highly confidential background check and concluded, no, don't give this man the clearance. But here's the twist. Starmer had already announced the appointment. So the Foreign Office, faced with what was described as a dilemma, used a rarely invoked authority to simply override the recommendation from security officials and granted Mandelson something called developed vetting anyway. They looked at the red flag, nodded politely, and binned it. Now, let's just sit with that for a second. The security services said no. Career civil servants who exist precisely to make these calls said no. And some bureaucrat in the Foreign Office went, yeah, but we've already told the press, so, yes. That's not due process. That's a cover-up in a nice suit. But wait, because this is where it really kicks off. For months, Keir Starmer stood in Parliament and reassured MPs that Mandelson had completed security vetting and that no red flags had been raised. He said due process was followed. He pointed to a letter from the Foreign Office to Mandelson in January last year that literally stated, in writing, your security clearance has been confirmed by the vetting unit and is valid until the 29th of January, 2030. So either Starmer knew the truth and misled Parliament, or he genuinely had no idea his own Foreign Office had overridden national security advice about his own handpicked ambassador. And somehow neither of those options makes him look good. Kemi Badenoch isn't mincing words. She's saying Starmer misled Parliament. The Lib Dem leader Ed Davey says it looks like he lied to the British public and called it a catastrophic error of judgment. Even Reform UK and the Greens, groups who agree on approximately nothing, are both calling for the Prime Minister to resign. That's quite the coalition of critics. Now, to be fair, and we try to be fair here, Starmer himself said on Friday that it was unforgivable he wasn't told about the failed vetting while he was standing up in Parliament defending the process. He was in France at the time, dealing with the Iran situation, and is promising to lay out the fact to Parliament on Monday. Downing Street also moved quickly Thursday night to sack the Foreign Office's top official, Olly Robbins, in what looks very much like a desperate attempt to make someone else the story. Classic crisis management. Find a body to throw under the bus before the bus hits you. And this is the truly brutal part for Labour. Mandelson was already gone, sacked back in September when U.S. congressional documents blew the lid off the full extent of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Police have already opened a misconduct investigation into him. He's been arrested and bailed over allegations he leaked sensitive government documents to Epstein during his time as a minister. The Epstein chapter was supposed to be closed. Starmer had moved on. He'd managed to claw back some breathing room after navigating Britain's position on Iran. And then Thursday happened, and the Mandelson saga came roaring back like it never left. One Labour MP, speaking anonymously, naturally, described it as a gift that keeps on giving. Another said David Lammy, who was Foreign Secretary when all of this vetting business went on, should resign. The choice, this MP reportedly said, is incompetence over deceit. That's a Labour backbencher talking about their own government. 3 weeks before local elections, they are already expected to lose badly. Let's zoom out for a moment, because the bigger picture here is damning. This isn't just a Mandelson problem anymore. This is a question about whether Keir Starmer has actual control over his own government. His team's argument is that he genuinely didn't know until this week what the Foreign Office had done. Think about what that means. His handpicked ambassador to Washington, a figure controversial enough to generate security concerns, was quietly given the green light via a bureaucratic workaround. And the Prime Minister had no idea. That's not a cover-up. That's worse. That's a prime minister who doesn't know what's happening in his own building. And with local elections 3 weeks away, this lands like a brick through a window. Labour is already looking at a bruising set of results. Voters who've been grumbling about the economy, about the winter fuel cut, about the general sense that this government has underdelivered, they now get to add an apparently nobody in charge knows what anyone else is doing to the list. Reform is polling strongly in many of those local contests. Voters who want change aren't switching back to the Conservatives. They are coming here. Monday's parliamentary statement from Starmer is going to be extraordinary viewing. He has to explain how he stood up and vouched for a process that was quietly being subverted. He has to explain why no minister apparently knew. He has to explain the letter, the override, and the cover-up that everyone can now see in plain sight. This is the kind of story that doesn't quietly go away. This is the kind of story that echoes. If you want to stay ahead of every twist in this saga, and trust me, there are more twists coming, hit subscribe on British Reform and ring that notification bell. We'll be here every time this government finds a new way to trip over itself. And at this rate, that's going to be quite often.